Week 7 NFL picks, as well as Week 8 college football picks that you can take to the bank. Let's get into it. First game of the NFL week is Thursday night. I'm currently recording this on Thursday morning. You might see this after the game. I've got the Bengals upsetting the Steelers. Look, they're at home. I don't think the Steelers team is a 5-1 type feel. Short week in division. I'm getting 6 points with the Bengals. I'm taking their money line regardless, but I'm 100% taking the +6. I mean, at home, division rival. They got Jamar, they got T. I'm going to take them. Rams at Jags. I put at in quotes because the Jags are in London, which is kind of sort of their home at this point. Look, this is a toss-up game. The Rams are giving 3 points. I'll take the Jags +3. I think it's a 50-50 type game. Dolphins at Browns. Look, both these teams are in shambles. The Browns, they got blown up by the Steelers. As I'd mentioned, I don't think the Steelers are that good of a football team. The Dolphins are having player-only meetings, and the players aren't showing up. Week 7 NFL predictions, as well as Week 8 college football predictions that you can take to the bank. Let's get into it. First game of the week, and you might be seeing this after the game has already been played. I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals at home to cover and to win outright. Look, I think these teams are pretty even. I don't think the Bengals are a dumpster fire. I don't think the Steelers are a 5-1 caliber team. 5-1, that's a dominant juggernaut. I don't think the Steelers are that good. Short week, division rival. They got Jamar. Joe Flacco's playing okay. I think the Bengals upset them in a low-scoring 21-17 type game. And I'm obviously taking the Bengals +5.5 or +6. Rams at Jags. Not really at Jags because it's in London, but honestly, the Jags are kind of the London's home team at this point. I'm going to take Jags +3. I think it's an even matchup. I think these teams are even. And Jags have a lot more experience playing over there, as well as +3. Dolphins at Browns. Look, both these teams are dumpster fires. The Browns, they got blown up by the Steelers, who I've already mentioned, are not that good. The Dolphins, they're having player-only meetings and players aren't showing up. I mean, it's already a disaster in and of itself. Look, Browns -2.5. I honestly couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you. I would not bet on this game. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Eagles at Vikings. Look, Eagles have lost 2 games in a row. Eagles are essentially a pick 'em on the road at Minnesota. I gotta believe the Eagles get back on track. I gotta believe it. Look, they just won the Super Bowl. They were a dominant football team last year, winning every game after Week 5 that Jalen Hurts played in. I think they get it sorted out. And look, it's on the road against the good coaching Kevin O'Connell. I get that, but if it's a close game at the end, I trust Hurts a lot more than I trust McCarthy or Darnold. So I take Eagles. Panthers at Jets. Panthers are -1.5. Jets are +1.5. Look, Jets have got to win at some point. They're at home. The Panthers are 3-3. They might get a little cocky. They might think, we got this in the bag. Look, I really would like some points. I know the Jets are getting 1 point. I'd like 3, 4, 5. If I could get 3, 4, 5, I'd take it. I know that's not how gambling works, but I probably wouldn't touch this game. I do have an inkling suspicion that the Jets do show up. Look, they're not the worst team in the world. They're not good, obviously, but they're not the worst team in the world. At home, against an average team, you're going to accidentally win a few games. So I like the Jets, but look, I'm not really getting any points. I don't love that aspect. Patriots at Titans. Patriots are -7 on the road. Mike Vrabel returns to Nashville. That's a tough one to pick. I don't like taking the Patriots -7. They're on the road. They're not the highest scoring offense. I also really can't trust Cam Ward. If I had to take a team, I would take the Titans +7. I think they can keep it close. Raiders at Chiefs. Chiefs are -11.5. I'll take Raiders +11.5. I think strong run game, okay defense. The Chiefs are maybe a little too hyped up on that win against the Lions. I think the Raiders will keep it within 2 scores. Saints at Bears. Bears are -4.5. I don't get this line at all. Look, the Bears have looked very good. They're at home. The home away difference is 2, 2.5, 3. So we're essentially saying the Bears are only a point, maybe 2 points better than the Saints. I don't think that at all. I think the Bears win comfortably. Colts at Chargers. Chargers -1.5 also feels like a little bit of a weird line. That's saying these teams are even. Look, I'm not a big believer in Daniel Jones. I think he will inevitably have a fall off and not be the Daniel Jones we've been seeing. But look, it's in a dome. The Chargers don't really have a home field advantage. This is essentially saying the Chargers are a better football team because there is no home field advantage in Los Angeles. I'd probably lean Colts. I'd lean Colts. It could be a good game, though. Giants at Broncos. Look, I'm taking the Giants +7. This team is played with a lot of heart. I like the energy. I don't think they're going to get blown out. They might lose for sure, but I don't think this Broncos team, I don't trust the Broncos enough to be putting up a lot of. Look, if you're betting a team to win by more than a score, they need to be scoring a lot of points, and the Broncos don't do that. Commanders at Cowboys. Commanders are -2.5 going into Jerry's World. Should be a very good game. Over under at 54.5. I like that. That's going to be a good game. Fox's game of the week, I'm assuming. And if I could get 3 points, I'd take the Cowboys. -2.5. I'm split on this one. If I could get 3.5, I'd take the Cowboys. -2.5 feels like a push to me. If I could go -1.5, I'd go Commanders. So I think this line is set very nicely. Packers at Cardinals. Packers are -6.5. I do need to see if Kyler Murray is playing. I don't know what is going on with him. Is he playing? Okay, they are not telling me. So I'm probably going to go Packers either way. If it's Kyler Murray's playing, the line's going to go down a little bit. If he's not playing, it might tick up to 7.5. But I'm not a big Cardinals fan at this point. Falcons at 49ers. The 49ers are 2.5-point favorites. Falcons just came off a big win against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. Short week on the road, East Coast to West Coast. I think the 49ers take care of business. And we've got 2 pretty good games on Monday Night Football now. I don't know why they keep doing this. What is the point of Monday Night Football? It's supposed to be a standalone primetime game. Well, technically these are standalone because it's 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., but I don't get it. I really don't. Bucks at Lions, it's going to be a phenomenal game. I'm going to take the Bucks +5.5. Look, I think these teams are pretty even. I get the Lions are at home. They are going to be without Brian Branch, probably. So I'll take the Bucks +5.5. I think they keep it close. Texans at Seahawks. I'll take Seahawks -3. That's essentially, we got a Central Time Zone all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. I'll take Seahawks +3 or -3. Alrighty, now we're getting into college football. Now I am not an expert in college football. I'm more of an NFL expert, but if I see some lines I like, I'll take them. We've got a few Friday night games. We have Louisville at Miami. Miami has been dominant this year, potentially the best team in college football. Them and Ohio State. And Miami's -13.5. Look, they're at home. These Friday night surprises, they're usually the home team upsets. Miami takes care of business. Nebraska at Minnesota, don't care about that game. Georgia Tech at Duke is an interesting one. Look, if Georgia Tech wins out and then loses in the ACC Finals, they're going to make the playoffs. It's tough to exclude essentially a perfect team because, if they hypothetically, they win out and then they sit out or just don't try in that game, are you really going to exclude a one-loss ACC team that one loss was in the championship? I don't think so. So Georgia Tech, it's a big game for them. Look, they're on the road. They are the underdog. Over under 60.5. I think Georgia Tech's one drop game was to Wake Forest, and they won that game. I think Georgia Tech wins this game. We got LSU at Vanderbilt. I'm not a fan of Vanderbilt. I think LSU wins easily, and they're 2.5-point dogs. We got Oklahoma coming off the loss to Texas at South Carolina. South Carolina's a disaster. I really was a fan of Lenore Sellers. I thought he would be in conversations to be number 1 draft pick in this year's draft. It's not looking likely. Oklahoma rolls. We got Michigan State at Indiana. Indiana comes off the big win at Oregon. Look, it was a massive win, the biggest win in recent history for Indiana, and they should take care of business for sure. Got big game in SEC land. We've got Mississippi #5 at Georgia #9. Georgia is -7.5. Now this is interesting because Mississippi's undefeated. They're #5 team in the country, and they're a 7.5 points, a 2-score dog. Georgia needs this one. Look, Georgia needs this one. If you're a 2-loss SEC team, especially losing to Alabama and then losing to Ole Miss, you're not making the conference championship. And if you don't make the conference championship, then you might get a third SEC team, maybe. You need to get the tiebreaker. You do have the tiebreaker over Tennessee, obviously. But you got LSU. I mean, look, you need to win this game. If they lose this game, their playoff chances are dark. Because you'd have Mississippi undefeated with the edge over you. And then they've got tough games remaining. So I think Georgia needs this game. Got Ohio State at Wisconsin. Look, yeah, Ohio State's going to win that. I don't even know where I was going to go with that one. We've got Texas at Arkansas. Look, Texas only being 7.5-point favorites. It's kind of surprising. I'd expect them to be favored by a little bit more. Got Memphis at UAB. Look, Memphis could be the Group of 5 team that makes it in. You got to go. You got to go undefeated, obviously, but they could be that team. We'll have to see. We got Texas Tech at Arizona State. Not sure. Oregon at Rutgers. Look, this is kind of following the Penn State script where they play a real team, they lose close, and then they could go on a bit of a spiral. We're going to see how tough this team is, how mentally resilient this team is. But Penn State went through a very similar thing where they lost their only real game. Now, Oregon did, ironically, start the Penn State fall. But this could get messy. They're on the road. Maybe they get down in themselves. If Oregon's going to be a legit team, they're going to blow out Rutgers. We got Washington State at Virginia. Look, Virginia's favored by 17.5. I don't think UVA is that good. We got Texas coming off the big win. 12.5-point favorites at Kentucky. I think Texas is back. I think Texas is back is what it kind of feels like. Now, this game, I don't really care about the spread. I'm going to be honest. But I have bet a teaser, a 14-point teaser. Florida Atlantic versus South Florida. South Florida's favored by 21.5 points. I don't really care about that. The over-under is 73.5. That's the over-under. If you take a 14-point teaser, 87.5. And look, it's minus 300, minus 325 if you do the 14-point teaser. But look, an over-under of essentially 90. I mean, they're going to have to get into the 90s to go over that number. I just don't think it's possible. These games can go into overtime and things can get crazy, but I don't see a world where, and because they're favored by 21.5 points, it doesn't look like it's going to be a close game. I don't see a world where 90 points get scored. I mean, even a 73.5 line is absurd. You can't even settle for field goals. If both teams are going to need to score in the 40s, nobody can be kicking field goals, so I don't see it. We got a big game in Tuscaloosa, Tennessee at Alabama. Tennessee is minus 8.5 points. Look, both teams need this. Tennessee probably needs it more. Well, actually, I don't know. I would say Alabama could drop this game because their one loss was to FSU. If Alabama loses this and wins out, they will make the SEC, probably. No guarantees, but they most likely, barring Tennessee runs the table and Ole Miss stays undefeated, they most likely would make the playoffs. Vice versa, if Tennessee loses, that's a loss to one-loss Alabama, and then that's a loss to Georgia, which would have one or two losses. So Tennessee needs this one. If Tennessee loses, it's not as bleak as if Georgia loses, but honestly, it's just as bleak. So Tennessee better play inspired. Another team that needs a win. Honestly, both teams need to win. USC at Notre Dame. Look, Notre Dame, they lost 2 close games to Miami. Not 2 to Miami, but they lost 1 to Miami, which is the number 2 team. You barely lose that one. And I'm blanking on who they lost to in week 2. Who did they lose to? Texas A&M. Yeah. So they lost to 2 elite teams barely to start the season. If they go undefeated down the stretch, got to win at USC. Let me see who else they're playing that they can get big wins over. Because, 2 losses. Boise State's not really a big win. So you got USC. Man, it doesn't look good. And they got 2 bye weeks in there. Ridiculous. Honestly, they need this game, and this game might not even get them into the playoffs. Legitimately, it might not. But they need this one. If Notre Dame loses this one, they're gone. And honestly, USC's ranked 20th right now. They've got 1 loss. If USC, they lost to Illinois, barely by 2 points. I won't hold that against them. They beat Michigan. Cool. They've got at Oregon. Look, USC, maybe. I don't think so. Because if you lose to Illinois and then you lose at Notre Dame, Maybe that'd be a 2-loss team that could make it in potentially, just because of how they would have beaten Oregon and Michigan. So I think those are both quality wins. USC probably could lose this one, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't test it out, and that is the picks. We got one more. Utah at BYU. I'm not a big BYU guy. I think Utah gets the job done.